What's up, guys? This is the Visual Smuggler, and today we are in After Effects, and I am going to teach you how to make a metal-themed web banner. So this is what we're going to create. Cool little animated banner going on. This is actually a real animated banner that I created for the Bloodletting Tour, headlined by Origin, an amazing death metal band that you should check out if you haven't. Good news for you guys, I have all the ad material and I've been given permission to give it to you guys, so you can follow along and create this just as I do. But remember, we're learning technique here. We're not painting by numbers. That said, let's dive right in. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a new comp. We're going to go to Composition, New Composition. The size for this comp is going to be kind of weird, but it's 728 by 90. And the frame rate is going to be 30 frames per second. That will actually be very important at the end of this tutorial, but we'll get into that later. And the duration, about 10 seconds. So I'm going to click OK. And here we have our blank palette. So let's bring in some assets. First thing I'm going to do is go into my project panel, right click, choose Import, File. I'm going to bring in this Bloodletting North America Animation 2. I'll rename it to something that's a little easier to find in the project files, and it will be the only Photoshop file in there. So let's click Import. And After Effects is going to ask us how we want to import it. You don't want to bring it in as footage because that'll actually bring it in as a flat image. And we want to have all our layers separated just like they were in Photoshop. So you can either choose composition, or what I'm going to choose is composition, retain layer sizes. And editable layer styles is already clicked, so we can click OK. And that's going to bring in this new comp here. And what it also created was a folder. And within the folder are all the layers from Photoshop in the comp. But check this out. If I click on the comp, these are the layers we're going to be working with. There was more to the flyer, but I decided to dumb it down a little bit, and we are just creating a web banner. So I'm giving you just kind of this bare bones looking thing. We have this monster here. We, of course, have the Bloodletting North America 11 logos going on. So, and we have this really cool background with all kinds of layers to it. There's a cool little blood splatter we're going to use, all kinds of fun stuff. But the first thing I want to do is grab my background. So I'm going to turn off some layers here, and I'm lazy. So what I'm going to do is actually just pull layers from this comp and move them to the main comp. And I actually forgot to name the main comp. So let's give that a better name. I'm going to call it main. And we can close this main too. So the first thing I want to do is take my background. Let's turn off Mr. Monster Guy. And I'm just going to shift click these three layers. I'm going to do Control C, go to main, and Control V, copy paste. And you'll see that the layers come in, but they're actually not the size of the palette. So we're just going to do a little finagling here. And I'm going to grab this node here. Since all of these are highlighted, they will actually all resize together. And I'm just going to pull it out. There we go. Now, if you want them all to resize uniformly, you can actually hold shift when you do that, but I decided to do it this way. I'm just going to pull it out just a little more, give some life over there on this side. This black portion here is actually going to be covered by an asset, so I'm not really worried about it too much. And I don't want to go too high up because it just gets a little bright there. So I'm going to kind of keep it in this dark area with the nice little highlight there. All right, looks good. Now let's bring in our next asset. So I'm going to go back to that comp. I'm going to turn all of that off. I'm going to turn on monster. Get this monster head in there. I'm going to copy, Control C and Control V to paste. And you're going to be like, well, where's the monster head? No worries. It's right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this monster head and actually move it over here. Now he's just a little too big for the palette. So I'm going to hold shift. I'm actually going to click the node and hold shift. I'm going to just change the scale on the monster a bit because I really want him to fit in there. I want you to be able to see him pretty well. And you know what? To make this even easier to resize, check this out. I'm going to go to the anchor tool. I'm going to pull the anchor up to the monster's nose right there. I'm going to go back to the move tool. And now when I change, see, now when I change the size, everything is centered here on the monster's nose, and it's a lot easier for me to fix the layer because, like I said before, there was a lot to this layer that I chopped off. There's probably a piece somewhere. That's what's making it so big. So anyway, we're going to make him about that big. Now, what I want to do is rotate him a little bit. So I'm actually going to use the rotation tool. You can also click W for the hotkey. If you want to remember that, just think rotate. So we're going to rotate him a little bit, get that horn in there. I'll click V to go back to my move tool, the pointer tool. I'm just going to move him over to the side like that. Maybe we can scale him up just a tiny little bit. But I really want to keep that horn of his in there. It's Tim Curry from that one movie. Anyway, so we've got our monster head in there. Looks neat, looks kind of cool, but I don't know. He's kind of boring. So let's stylize him up a little bit. And what I'm going to do for the monster is I'm actually going to go over here and go to effects and presets and let's add a glow. So I'm just going to type in glow and it pops up right here. And you can actually drop it onto the layer within the composition panel, or you can come down here to the layers panel and drop it on. The glow looks pretty cool, but it kind of makes him look a little hokey. So I'm going to fix some parameters here and we will change color channels to alpha channels because I want the glow behind him. Now you can see how it changed. I'm going to keep that at 60. I'm going to change the radius to 11. The glow intensity I want to put at 1.3. And then I want to choose on top. There you go. Now you can see that glow is actually behind him. So the last thing I'm going to change is this color A. That's the top color because I really don't want a white glow. I want more of a gold kind of glow to match some of the logos that we're going to use. So I'm going to come up here, maybe go a little bit darker. Right about there. Okay, I'm happy with that. Are you happy with that? I'm happy with that. Cool. So we have our monster stylized up. He looks pretty neat, but he's still kind of boring. And what I want to do is actually make that glow pulse behind him. So let's do some animation. I'm going to go up here to glow radius. I'm going to click on the stopwatch. And here, if I click on the layer and then press U, it'll actually bring up the keyframe so I don't have to drill down into a bunch of different menus. And we have our keyframe right there. So what I want to do is go 20 frames in. And to get precise with your frames, you can use the page up and page down buttons. Don't use the arrow keys because that's not going to affect where the playhead goes. So for the glow radius, we're going to set that to 20. So you can see it does this little whoop. And we want it to pulse. So we will go another 20 frames. And we're going to come back down to 11. Whoops. There we go. So let's see it pulse. Neat. Now, we want it to keep pulsing. We don't just want it to pulse once. I mean, that's neat. So there are different ways you can do it. You can do it the hard way, which is basically you can highlight the keyframes, Control C, Control V, and it'll keep, pulsing kind of pretty well. And you can just do that all the way down the timeline, but that's the hard way. Let's do it the easy way. I'm going to show you an expression. Don't be afraid of that term. It's awesome. Expressions can save your life and they can save you a ton of time. So what we're going to do is we're going to press Alt and click on the stopwatch and you'll see that it brings up this code. So I'm just going to delete all of that code that's in there. And here's what I'm going to type. Loop with a lowercase L, out with an uppercase O, and then parentheses, parentheses. Okay? That's all we're going to type. Now watch what happens. Look at that. The pulse keeps going and it's going to loop forever. That easy. All you had to do was type loop out, parentheses, parentheses, and it loops forever. Really cool. And you can actually use that code for just about any kind of animation if you want it to keep looping. So anyway, let's close that up. Let's bring in our next asset, which is going to be the bloodletting logo. So it's this guy here. Control C. Control V to copy paste. You can see it came in kind of wonky. So I'm just going to move it to where I want it to be. And obviously it's a little too big. So again, we're going to shift click on the node here, or actually we're going to click on the node, then hold shift, and we're just going to bring it down just a bit, right about there. We can let it bleed off just a little bit. Remember, this is a web banner. As long as people can read it, it's fine. You know, we don't have to have it perfectly showing. So I'm just going to kind of move this around where I want it. And our center for this web banner has actually changed. Okay. Normally, if I turn on the title safes and I turn that off, you can see that our center is right here. But actually, our center is going to be just a little over to this side because now we're going off of the edge of the horn and the edge of the banner. So our center isn't exactly here. Things would look a little too offset. We're going to move them over just a bit. So let me turn that back on. And we have our title safes on. You can see that it is actually already moved over a bit. So that helps. And I'm going to turn those title saves off. And the first thing we want to do is just animate this guy in. So I'm going to start right at the beginning and I'm going to press P for position. And I am going to go 1 second in. Just a second. And this is where I want the animation to stop. I want bloodletting to come up from the bottom. So I'm going to hit the stopwatch and I'm going to set the keyframe for where I want it to stop. Then I'm going to go back here. And what we can do is either you can click on the layer, hold shift and pull it down, or you can use the position tool here, does the same thing. Bring it up, bring it down. So we're going to bring it all the way down. And basically all that's going to happen is this. Hello, bloodletting. That looks cool. It comes in, you know, it's kind of cinematic or whatever, but it's a little bit rigid. So what I'm going to do is actually highlight these two keyframes and I am going to right click, keyframe assistant, choose easy ease, and that will give it a bit more smooth movement. Nice. Looks a lot better. Easy ease basically just smooths out the movements. There's also ease in, ease out. You don't want to just plot a keyframe, and have rigid movements. You want things to be smooth and look nice. You know, we're working on nice stuff here. So there we go. We got that. I'm going to actually keep this logo up for about 17 frames after it pops in. So here, this is highlighted. That's where the keyframe actually lives. And we're going to go 17 more frames. And then I want to cut off the layer there. There are two different ways you can do this. My current screen recorder will actually not let me use the hotkey, but what you can do is actually Control Shift D and it'll make a cut just like it would in a video editing platform like Premiere Pro. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to the end here and do it the corny way and just kind of bring that in. And it snaps if you press Shift. So basically what I want to happen is I just want that to turn off. And I'm looking at the background here and there's one thing I'm not seeing that I want to see. I'm going to go back to this comp where kind of all of our stuff is. I'm going to turn on this blood splatter. Just Control C, Control V. I'm going to bring this down so that it's down there with the background stuff. And let's pull this up and it is that cool looking blood splatter. And what I want to do is just make sure it's kind of covering everything like that. Looks a lot cooler. Yeah, that looks really cool. We got some of that red in there. We heated up the background with a little bit of red because it's, it's so cool with the blues. Color terms, guys. Come on. You know this stuff. So that's going to turn off and we want the next wording to pop in right away. So the next part of that is North America 11. I think that's 11. Yeah, X is 10 and 1. Yeah, 11. We'll just go with that. So I'm going to copy and paste both of those layers, bring them in right on top. And I just want them to show up when the other one turns off. So I'm going to make sure I go down to the frame. Just going to pull these over, shift click so they snap. And where are they? Well, again, we got to pull them in. And they need a little resizing, so I'm just going to resize them both individually. I'm going to click on North America, press S to bring up the scale. That's the size. Just bring it down ever so slightly. So it just fits on the screen there. Number 11. You can make fun of me if that's not 11. I really don't care. But I think this tour has been going on for 11 years. So I'm going to bring that in. I'm going to move it just so that it's with the North America. Maybe we can bring it down to 45. Yeah, I like that. Let's move it up just a bit. Fit it in there. So it's looking kind of crazy. Now, one thing you guys might notice, I'm noticing it right away, and it's really bothering me. The red clashes with that blood splatter in the background. So let's create some separation. What I'm going to do is start with a drop shadow. It's one of my favorite things to use. Shadows really do help create separation with images. And I'm going to drop that on North America. And the parameters for the drop shadow are 100, 135 degrees. We're good there. 5 and 1. So now you can see it's already creating a little bit of that separation that we want, but it's still not enough. So I'm actually going to throw on some glow onto that layer, and it creates a wacky looking glow. I'm just going to go down the parameters real quick. Alpha channels, we'll keep it at 60. We're going to go 46 for the radius. This one's not going to pulse. It's just going to be a static glow. And we're going to go with on top. Look at that. Now that really stands out from the background. Now you might be thinking, okay, well now we got to do all those parameters to the 11 over here, the XI. It's a little easier than that. Just you can shift click these two effects, Control C. Let's go to the XI or the 11 and Control V. Boom. It just pastes them over. Yeah, you can paste over effects. It's pretty awesome. Collapse those just so they're out of the way. And now let's play this back. This is going to pop up and boom. That just pops right in. Looks pretty cool. And we will keep that up for 1 second. So we're going to go from 118 to 218. Gives people a chance to read it. You know, rule of thumb that I've always heard from animation teachers is that you want to keep something up long enough for somebody to read it twice or 3 times. So I'm just going to stop those. We're doing like a hard stop. So it's like boom, boom, out. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to animate in some band names. And I'm just going to use standard text for this. I'm not going to use logos. The thing that I want to do will look a lot cooler with just the standard text. So I'm going to come up here to my text tool. And the color I want is already chosen. It's kind of that cream orange looking color. So I'm just going to click in here and I'm going to type Origin. That's the headlining band. And we need to scale that up a bit. Oops, it came in kind of weird. But we're going to press S and let's just scale it up. You know what? Let's go 242. Cool. Now let's position it to the center that we want. Remember, uh, if you align it, it's going to center about there, but it just doesn't look right because remember, we're cutting off here at the horn. So let's turn on the title saves and we're just going to move the center over right about there. I like that. Let's make sure it's also centered vertically. Turn off those title saves. Kind of eye it. Okay, cool. So let's do some animation. Now, the animation I want to do is an animation I've used for a lot of things. It's a really cool scale animation. And what it's going to do is it's going to kind of throw the word forward at you. It's super easy to do. So I'm going to show you how to do it. The first thing we want to do is go about 10 frames in. And let's set a keyframe because this is where we want to stop. This is where the size that we want origin to be. I'm going to come back to where it first pops in. And I'm going to bring the scale down to 18.3. Let's see how that looks. Uh-oh. Looks kind of odd, huh? It looks like it's coming from a corner. Well, I can show you why. Let's actually go back a little bit. What we want to do is come here to the anchor tool. Our anchor is in the corner. We actually want it to be in the center because we want this to come from the center. So I'm just going to toss the anchor tool roughly in the center there. And now when I change the parameter to 18.3, now it's going to come from the center. All right, cool. But that was okay. That's neat. It's kind of boring. Let's throw that easy ease on there. Maybe that'll help. See what that looks like. Okay, that's neat, but we can stylize this even better. What I'm gonna do is the trusty old Wigglorama, and we're gonna make this look a little chaotic. So let's type in Wigglorama, and we can bring it in there. And right now it's gonna skew the text. Don't worry about that. We're gonna fix it. First thing I want to do is set my parameters to 3. And if you can't tell, I'm actually reading off of a cheat sheet. I already had the parameters set before, but whatever. 5.2, we're going to set this to 5. We do not want the rotation at all because that's what's making it go off the screen. So let's go to 0 and yay, it's back on screen. We're going to go to 0% for scale because we don't want the scale changing. We already have a scale animation. And the wiggle width we'll leave at 10%. You don't have to worry about any of these. So now what it should look like is that. It's got a little more chaos to it. It looks a lot cooler. And now we can add in all the rest of the bands that are on the tour. I'm going to do that real quick so you guys don't have to sit here watching it. But basically, it's the exact same animation. But I'm going to show you something a little cool once I get all those in. All right, guys. So I got the rest of my logos in there. And what I want to show you is something cool that I decided to do. I did like a little cascade effect. So what I'm going to do is come into my origin layer and let's zoom in with the plus and minus keys. I'm going to go to the end of the layer and I'm going to go back 5 frames. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to grab this layer and I have them all selected so they all move together. But let's pull that in 5 frames. Now what you can see is that all of a sudden that layer shows up back there. You see it back there? And what it's going to do is this really cool cascade effect. Check this out. We've got origin, boom, 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 boom. Looks cool, huh? You know, and it just adds a little flair to it. So it's like band, 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 and you can see them cascading in behind each other. That's pretty much all you need to do for the logos. Basically, what I did was copy and paste some keyframes. I changed some of the positions a little bit because some of the names are longer than others. Had to change the sizes a little bit to just compensate, but that's how I got the logos in there, and they look really cool. So now the last thing we got to do is get some information in there. So I'm going to go to the end, and we want to let people know where and when the show is taking place because that's the whole point of this banner is to promote the tour and promote where it's happening. So we're going to localize this. We're going to go to T. We're going to stay with the same font. I'm using the Bebas font. I'm actually using Bebas New. These are free fonts that you can download from defont.com. If you look down below, I've linked them. And these are great, kind of simple sans serif fonts that I love to use. So I am going to type the date of the show. It is Sunday, October 22nd. Obviously, that's a little small. So let's play with the scale. Make it a little bigger. And we can move it. I actually want this to show up pretty much right like that. Wow. Perfect scale, huh? I'm going to use my title safes just to make sure that it's not too high, not too low. Bring it in just a bit. Remember, I'm trying not to center this because, again, we cut off at the horn, not at the actual edge of the palette. So we want this to start pretty much right away after the last logo ends. And what I want to do, why can't I see it? Oh, there's a frame. Okay, what I want to do is animate on this text and I want to do it kind of creatively. I don't want it to just pop in. I don't want to fade up from nothing. I want to do kind of a cool animation to go along with this cascade we've been doing. So what I'm going to do is come over here to effects and presets. Let's get rid of Wigglorama. And I'm going to go to animation presets. If you come down here, these are all preset animations that will make your life easier when you're trying to animate. Let's go to text. And there are just a ton of text animations that you can go crazy with the ways that you work with text in After Effects. And you don't have to worry about setting the keyframes. It'll start it for you and then you can edit it from there. Anyway, let's go to animate in. I'm going to come down to straight in by word. It's kind of cut off, but it's straight in by word. And basically what I want to have happen is each word come in one after another. So we will take this, we're going to just drop it right on there. and check out what happens. Bam, bam, bam. Looks pretty cool. The only problem is it starts a little late. I kind of want it to start almost right away as soon as the Kennedy veil goes away. And it just starts a little late for me. So what I'm going to do is click here. And if you type U, it'll bring up the keyframes for the animation that you just used. And I'm going to zoom in a little. I think I'm going to come back just a bit. And where does that animation start? You can actually see where the word comes in. It starts right about there. So if I come here, there we go. Let's see how that looks. Nice. It's a shock to the senses. It's like, you got that, you got that. Boom, there's some information. Awesome. Looks cool. So I'm going to keep that on screen for about 20 frames. So and one thing you guys might notice is I keep doing things like 20 frames or 10 frames or even 5 frames at a time. The reason I'm doing things in such small time amounts is because I want these animations to be quick. Remember, this is a web banner, it's not a big video. We want to get information and graphics moving quickly. So when somebody clicks on a website, they're going to see this, it's going to catch their eye, and they're going to want to watch the whole thing as it loops. So anyway, we can extend this to the end if we want to, because it's actually, we're going to animate it out. So I'm going to do a position animation. What I want to do is just take all the text and move it up. With the layer selected, I'm going to press Shift P to bring up position. Let's click the stopwatch. I'm going to go, take a wild guess, 10 frames. And I am going to move this out of here, just off screen. So it's going to do this little. Let's do our easy ease because it always makes things look better. Now you might be wondering, why didn't I do easy ease when the words come in? I actually like that as a rigid animation, so I don't feel like it needs the easy ease. It just wouldn't work for what's going on there. But you can see how it's just going to fly up. And what we want to do is when that flies up, we want to bring some information in from the bottom. And what I want to show is the venue information. So we're going to go to the end there. Let's go back to our text tool. This specific show took place at the Cobra Lounge in Chicago. If you ever get a chance and you're in Chicago and you want to see awesome national touring bands at a small club, check out the Cobra Lounge or check out Reggie's. Both super cool places in Chicago. I definitely recommend checking out both. The people that I work with, Empire Productions, they do all kinds of heavy tours. And these are, I'm talking big bands like Origin, Cannibal Corpse, bands like Terror, Hatebreed. They all play at these small clubs, and it's such a cool experience. So if you get a chance, check these clubs out. Anyway, back to what we're doing. I'm going to scale this up. And what's nice is that we can see actually the text that was above. It's in this red box here. So I can scale this text to kind of match that. There we go. And I'm going to turn my title safes back on just so I can make sure that we are centered. Come down a little bit. And I think we're good right there. Happy with the way that looks. The thing I hate about the title safes, like I turn them off all the time just because I want to see what I'm creating and they just like get in the way. It's just a lot of clutter on the screen. So we've got Cobra Lounge Chicago. We are going to animate that in. So again, you can use Control Shift D to make a cut. It just makes it a lot easier. I'm doing it the old fashioned way. And we want to animate this from coming up from the bottom. So I'm going to go here, Shift P for position. Let's go, not the scale. Let's go down. Just going to hide it under there. Hit that stopwatch. We're going to go 10 seconds and bring it up. Turn those title safes on that I hate so much just to make sure that we are centered. I'm happy with that. Are you happy with that? Good. So here's what's going to happen. It looks kind of cool, but I feel like they're a little too staggered. So what I want to do is actually, I'm going to set my easy ease keyframes just for that smooth movement. Come here to easy ease. And I'm actually going to pull this in a little bit. See what happens with these easy ease keyframes is the animation actually starts early. So we need to compensate for that. So what I want to do is like when this text is just about gone, I actually want to start seeing the bottom text coming up. Yeah, there we go. Now it's a little quicker, you know. So when that stuff flies in, shoo, 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 boom, nice. I love the way that looks. Let's make sure that this is going all the way to the end of the animation. And that's a little piece of information that we're going to see at the end. And that will be the end of the animation. So what's going to happen is it will loop and start over. And let's take a look at what the full animation looks like. Let me collapse some of these and let's see what we created. Bloodletting, America, bands, cascading in formation, pulls up, boom. That looks so cool. I am very happy with it. But we're not done. We still need to prepare the GIF file that we're going to send to the web designer. So to do that, what we're actually going to have to do is render out this animation, prepare it for Photoshop, and then jump into Photoshop and create our GIF. It's a little convoluted, but it's really not hard to do. So the first thing I want to do is come up here to Composition, Add to Render Queue. You can see I've actually rendered it out a billion times already. I'm going to go to Lossless, come down here, and we're going to choose PNG Sequence. I'm going to choose RGB plus alpha just to make sure we don't have any transparent layers. And millions of colors. Let's click OK. Let's choose where we want to save it. I'm actually going to save this in main V4. This is the fourth version of this I've had to do. Save and render. All right, guys, so I rendered everything out, and now it's time to bring it all into Photoshop. I have Photoshop opened here, and the first thing I want to do is go to Window, go to Workspace, and we're going to choose Motion. You're going to see things change. Now it kind of looks like a video editor, which is essentially what we're about to do. So now let's bring in our animation. What we're going to do is go to File, Open. It opens actually right to the folder because I did this once before. We're just going to click on the very first image, and then we're going to come down here to Image Sequence and just click that box. Open. Now here it's going to ask us what the frame rate is. Remember at the very beginning of this video when we were setting up our comp, I was like, you need to pay attention to the frame rate that you're setting your stuff at. We did 30 frames per second. So let's keep it at 30 frames per second in Photoshop so it doesn't mess with our animation at all. Let's click OK. Photoshop's going to do its thing. And doesn't that look familiar? Now, what we can do is you can actually press the spacebar to play, and you'll see kind of a pixelated version of the animation play. Don't worry if you stop the playhead from going, everything looks fine. It's just that's just how Photoshop plays it. It gives you the kind of halvesy, pixelated-y version of it. What we really want to do is render this thing out. So let's export it. We're going to come up here to File, Export, Save for Web Legacy. It's going to bring up this menu. Photoshop's kind of chugging a little bit, but it just needs to load it up. The first thing we want to do is pick what kind of image it's going to be. Of course, we want to make a GIF file because that's what we are going to give to the web designer. And then the next thing we want to do is we want to ensure that this doesn't just play once. We want to make sure it loops over and over. So when people come to this website, that they see this looping over and over and over and over and over, and they don't miss out on any of the information. To do that, we're going to come down to looping options and choose forever. That's all you got to do to set that up. Let's click save. And let's choose where to save it. I'm actually going to overwrite this old one, web banner. There we go. And save. It's asking me if I want to replace it. Of course I do. Let Photoshop chug along, do its thing, and it's done. So I'm going to close down Photoshop. And look at that. We have a little web banner saved. Let's double click on it, see what it looks like. Look at that. That is our animation that we created in After Effects, rendered it out through Photoshop, and it plays forever. Watch this. Starts over. Ooh, looks good. You can send that off. Guys, this has been a fun one. I really love bringing back the web banners. People don't do it a lot anymore. Sometimes they just do static images. Let's give it some flair. Let's be creative. Let's create something that looks awesome. That said, be good to each other, support the arts, be creative, and as always, best of luck.